Hey, I'm Mac. Welcome back to my channel. So we are going to talk about this company called MUD WTR, I think. Except they stylize it as MUD \WTR. Now, backslash is a pretty unusual piece of punctuation. It doesn't really have any purpose other than in programming and other computer stuff, pretty much. It's pretty rare that you see a backslash ever used. I think it was actually created so that you could use it paired with a, I think there's a math operation where you have like something like this, like logic where you have this symbol. And so if you put a slash and then you put a backslash, you can create that symbol. I think that's why typewriters had it. If you're using the terminal on a Linux computer or a Mac, backslash in the terminal indicates, like, to the computer, you're saying, the next character after this backslash that I'm gonna type normally has a special meaning to it, but this time I want you to ignore that and just treat it like it's regular text, okay? So perhaps that's what they're doing here. You know, the backslash before water means like, hey, I know normally the word water has a definition, okay, but like today we're gonna ignore that, okay, and just treat water like it's a meaningless sound. I mean, it's fitting. It is it's a correct use of an escape sequence, so I'll give it points for that. That's my programming computer nerd joke for the day, I guess. That's my quota. Like, that's the last one I'm gonna make, please. Oh boy, this is going really smoothly. So I figure the best way to introduce this concoction is to let them introduce it to us. So let's, you know, like old time's sake, let's have a Mac react, okay? Here we go. Let's go. Also, these two presenters are, you'll see, I'm fascinated by them. They are so uncanny and surreal. It's really something.
This is mud water. And yes, it is called that.
That's the actual name
Of the product.
It would be totally appropriate for you to wonder why a coffee alternative filled with adaptogens would be named after wet dirt.
I mean, I actually wasn't wondering that because I figured it was so that people would talk about it more and you could have cheeky jokes like this. I mean, I just said that. But my other hypothesis would be, is it because it's bullshit? And so, like, when you put manure on the field, it fertilizes the dirt. Is that why?
Wet dirt is the source of a lot of things that are relatively important to us.
Like plants.
I mean, wet dirt is, but I wouldn't say that mud necessarily is. Okay, technically that plant that you just held up is in potting mix, not mud, but whatever. It's not dirt or mud, it's potting mix. You don't put dirt on an indoor plant because we don't have time to get into this.
Trees.
And mud wrestling.
Gross.
Inside.
Just want everyone to look at that for a second. Like, what is this? Is this 2002? The 2000s called They Want Their Poster Back.
Jealous.
This is weird.
With 1/7 the caffeine of coffee, you get focus and energy.
Yeah, so that's actually not true anymore. It used to be 1/7 at 14 milligrams, but it's actually back up to 35 milligrams now, which is 1/3 the caffeine of a cup of coffee. So I guess it just wasn't enough of a boost.
Without the jitters, crash, or sleep. It's made from cacao.
From the Latin theobroma, cacao, known for promoting natural energy and occasionally becoming chocolate.
Okay, becoming chocolate is seriously underselling the complexity of the process required to turn cacao into chocolate. If you've never watched a video about it or like read an article about chocolate making, you should. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I mean, also, whatever with the cacao, who cares?
Solid chai.
A feel-good blend of black tea and functional spices.
It's just chai. It's black tea with spices, okay? That's all it is. And that's where the caffeine that is in this concoction is coming from, is from the chai. It's just tea.
Turmeric.
A colorful root that contains antioxidants and is confusing to spell.
How is it confusing to spell turmeric? It's spelled exactly like what it sounds like. Am I missing something about it? Like, I don't know.
Himalayan salt.
Salt. Himalayan.
I mean, at least they accurately portrayed that. Like, here's the thing with Himalayan salt. It's just sodium chloride. Like 99% of it is just sodium chloride. And then there are small amounts of impurities that give it that pink color. So it's other elements that are present with the sodium chloride. And it's usually mined from a couple of places in Pakistan. And here, the thing is, a lot of times other companies, not them here, but a lot of times other companies will claim some type of benefit to Himalayan salt versus regular salt. But yeah, while it's true that it contains small amounts of other elements other than sodium chloride, and perhaps those could be necessary or beneficial for you, it's only like less than 1% of what's in there that is anything other than sodium chloride. And for there to be a significant amount of those other elements, you would need to be using like way too much salt. Okay, you don't usually use that much salt. Even if you are just crazily oversalting your food, it's still gonna be like none of those other elements present, because you just, like, salt is not used in, you're not eating like a pile of salt, you know, even if you are a salt fiend. So I'm glad they said that, at least, I guess. I don't know. It's so expensive to get that salt, and it's so pointless. There's no reason for it other than I guess it looks nice. It's just salt.
Cinnamon. And
Okay, so we got what? We got cloves, we got nutmeg, we got cacao, we got cinnamon, we got pepper, we got turmeric. Are we making Skyline chili? Like, all you'd need to add is like cumin, allspice, maybe some cayenne and some garlic powder. You got Skyline chili, and then a big pile of cheese on it. Maybe some tomato sauce. Maybe you just need to replace your coffee with Skyline chili. God, I'm being Ohioan today. Whoo! Don't be a hater, okay? Don't. It's an immigrant Greek creation. You know, they're kind of riffing on chili con carne, but with a Greek spin on it. That's why it has a very like Middle Eastern spice profile to it. Skyline chili. And then you serve it over spaghetti to really make the Texans' heads explode.
and 4 adaptogenic mushrooms.
I'm gonna go through the mushrooms later. At the end of this, at the conclusion, I'll go through the evidence about the mushrooms, or lack thereof.
Chaga.
Promotes a healthy immune system.
Reishi.
The ancient mushroom of immortality. For mood support.
I mean, you would think that if it really led to immortality, then the ancients who were using it would be able to tell us about it.
Cordyceps.
For all natural energy.
Lion's mane.
Supporting mental clarity and in no way involving lying.
Yeah, that would definitely be illegal.
We're very proud to say that these mushrooms are grown in Carlsbad, California.
Everything in here is organic.
Yeah, they're grown there by M Squared Ingredients, I believe is the name of the company that grows them. Mud water just uses powder that M Squared supplies to them, to be clear here, because they kind of make it sound like they're using like whole mushrooms, or that they're actually adding mushrooms to their to the product when they're creating it. No, it's just powder that M Squared ships to them. And I guess it's still certified organic, and that's what they put into they put 560 milligrams of each powder into the little packet thing. That's it. That's all it is. I don't know. They really make it sound like they're like putting, they're chopping up mushrooms and putting it in there. But like, no, it's just mushroom powder that they purchase from a third party.
Organic. Whole 30.
Oh, good. Just in case Rachel Hollis comes by and is like, oh, you're drinking mud water? I thought you were doing Whole 30. Just don't be eating a pizza, okay? Don't. You can't. She'll judge you, and then she'll write a book.
And your tin is recyclable, upcyclable.
Using a tin as a vase is not upcycling. That's downcycling. Because, like, that's something that's a purpose that could be served by a lot of things. A lot of things could act as a vase. We're not really searching for materials that we can use as vases. The goal is when you're recycling, is to either replace the product that you're recycling, as in with an aluminum can, you can turn it into a new can. Usually most recycled aluminum cans become a new aluminum can within about 60 days. They'll be back on the shelf because it is a lot cheaper and requires a lot less electricity to recycle aluminum than to create new aluminum from bauxite ore. And so, that's recycling, because it is very in demand to have more material to use to make more aluminum cans. And so the fact that aluminum can keep being aluminum, that's recycling. Downcycling is where you're kind of just trying to figure out something to do with this trash. Okay? And upcycling would be something where it would basically be something like recycling. So, sorry, but that is downcycling.
And remarkably easy to look at.
What does that mean? I mean, it kind of looks like they ripped off the RX bar design, doesn't it? Where they like list out the ingredients and everything. I'm just saying, on a black background with white text like that, and vertically left justified bold font with a little line. That almost seems legally actionable.
But most importantly, drink it.
Drink the mud.
I'm all set.
Drink the mud. Into your body.
You'll see.
So I didn't find that to be like the most convincing thing. You know what? We're just gonna speed run the evidence on their mushrooms. We're gonna look right into all of it. Well, I am, okay, and I'm gonna tell you my finding. So for the Reishi mushroom, they claim that it is adaptogenic and that it supports immune function. Okay. I mean, on top of that being vague, here's what I was able to locate for evidence. A study in Gulf War veterans found that reishi made their Gulf War illness symptoms more severe at high doses and did not do anything at low dose. And then a study funded by a reishi supplement manufacturer found that it had no effect on the quality of life or disease progression of non-small cell lung cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. Those were the only randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled studies on humans that I could locate. All the rest were open label, or they didn't use a placebo, or they were not randomized, or they had other major study design issues. So I mean, I'm not convinced. For lion's mane, and we do mean the mushroom, not mane of a lion, it's claimed to promote cognition and focus on the MUD water site. A randomized controlled trial with 43 participants tested episodic memory and reaction times through several different tasks in addition to filling out a subjective stress inventory at baseline. Then 60 minutes after ingesting a lion's mane supplement, and again after taking the lion's mane supplement for 28 days. While they did find that the lion's mane group had reduced reaction times for one of the tests they did from an average of 737 milliseconds at baseline to 688 milliseconds 1 hour after taking the supplement, they did not find the same result after 28 days. And in fact, they did not find any statistically significant effect. On the other hand, the participants who took lion's mane made more errors and remembered fewer words on both day 1 and day 28 than the placebo group, and the difference was statistically significant in a memory test. There were no other observed statistically significant effects. Also, this paper was funded by a company that manufactures and sells lion's mane supplements, and this is the best they could come up with. Embarrassing. All right, chaga. The claim is that it is an antioxidant and that it supports immune function. You don't need to take any type of antioxidant. Taking antioxidants as supplements has been studied very extensively, and it does not have any detectable benefits in any study. I was not able to locate any controlled human trials testing the supposed immune benefits of chaga, or any other benefits for that matter, which is certainly a weird state of affairs if it is as effective as they claim it to be. You would think you'd want to do a randomized controlled trial on humans right away, okay? But it would seem they are dragging their feet for reasons unknown to me. The next one is King Trumpet. The claim is that it contains macronutrients such as protein and fiber. These are very strange things to cite as being a benefit of something your product contains just 560 milligrams of. 560 milligrams when we're talking about fiber or protein, it is such a teeny tiny amount that it would not be considered a significant source. That's kind of a red flag, okay? It makes me wonder why they would say that. The possibilities are that they just throw claims up here without actually thinking about them for the 5 seconds it would take to realize how stupid it sounds, or they do think about what they're claiming, but are unaware that 560 milligrams is a completely trivial amount of a macronutrient, or they do think about it and they are aware that it is an utterly meaningless amount, but they are hoping you will not think about it for more than 5 seconds. You know, there's got to be a reason they're saying this, because it defies explanation. Whichever one of these it is, it doesn't say a lot in favor of trusting MUD water. Shocker, right? But in addition to those macronutrients, they also say that it contains vitamins B1, B2, vitamin D, as well as potassium, magnesium, and zinc. I looked up the nutrition facts of King Trumpet, and it states that in a 100-gram serving, there is 6% of your recommended daily intake for thiamine, which is B1, 15% for riboflavin, which is B2, 35% of your recommended daily intake of niacin, which is B3, 15% for B5, which is pantothenic acid, or 6% of your daily recommended intake of folate, 15% for vitamin D, 6% potassium, 2 grams of protein, and 3 grams of fiber. That's for a 100-gram serving, but there's only 560 milligrams in MUD water. So, you know, in a serving of MUD water from the King Trumpet, you're getting 0.033% of your recommended daily intake of thiamine, which is 1/30th of 1%, okay, or 1/3000th of your daily intake, 0.084% for riboflavin, which is 1/12th of 1%, okay, Vitamin D is also 1/12 of 1%. Potassium, 1/30th of 1%. Protein, 1/6000th of your recommended daily intake of protein, and 1/2000th of your recommended daily intake of fiber. Do you see what I'm saying here? This is their entire stated rationale for why King Trumpet is included in some of their products. I'm not nitpicking or being unfair here. They're the ones who apparently think these nutrients are present in meaningful quantities to the degree that they were seemingly more than happy to use them in an argument for why you should pay through the nose for their product. Okay? So, I mean, it's... So what's going on here? Are they just making dishonest and deceptive statements because they don't give a shit? Or do they legitimately not see any problem with stating that something is a good source of protein and fiber when it in fact contains only 11 milligrams of the former and 16 milligrams of the latter at most? Not a great look either way. The remaining mushrooms all have the same claims made about them. And those remaining mushrooms are turkey tail, cordyceps, maitake, and shiitake. And they're all claimed to support the immune system and to be a source of potent antioxidants. Again, taking exogenous antioxidants has been shown time and time again in very large, well-designed studies to have no detectable benefits. And the evidence is so extensive that I would consider any use of an antioxidant claim to be an indicator of deceptive marketing or of ignorance by the company. There's just no excuse for using that claim unless you don't know what you're talking about. Furthermore, even if there were evidence that any of these mushrooms did what they claimed, it kind of wouldn't matter anyway, because there's only 560 milligrams of each of them in each serving of mud water. A lot of these mushrooms are usually just eaten as food. People would be overdosing if 560 milligrams were doing anything. The New York Times has a reishi mushroom tea recipe that calls for 29 grams of mushrooms, or 51 times the dose that's in mud water, for 1 cup of tea. Cleananddelicious.com has a lion's mane mushroom recipe that makes 2 servings from half a pound, or 225 grams, or more than 401 times the dose that mud water contains of the stuff. And also, hey, if you're hell bent on this mushroom supplementation crap, there's an idea that would be so much fresher, tastier, not to mention cheaper than mud water. Making a mushroom tea or recipe yourself with fresh mushrooms instead of paying for mud water's social media advertising. Because honestly, some of these sound pretty good. I mean, with how much mud water costs, you could get fresh mushrooms for just as cheap. Actually, it'd be a lot cheaper. And then you could still have your coffee. Oh, just for moral support, this is my Coffea arabica plant. It is an arabica coffee plant. It wanted to sit in on this trial, okay? Creepy much?
Let's make an unboxing video. Those tend to go viral.
Wait, first of all, do they? Second of all, okay, we're going to establish this as being like the Kazelka theorem, okay? No video that declares itself as going to be viral will ever go viral. Also, I mean, do viral videos even happen anymore? I don't know. I don't think so. But you can't have a self-proclaimed viral video. You can't be like, let's go viral, and then have your video actually go viral. It doesn't happen.
Let's go viral.
You will never go viral.
With every starter kit, we provide some light reading. Everything from recipes to building healthy habits.
When you've got your 30 or 90 servings at the ready, maybe a little creamer, maybe a little sweet.
You put creamer in this shit too? Ugh.
Choose your favorite heartwarming mug.
Oh my god. You guys, that mug has profanity on it. My poor heart.
And
do you want us to go or?
preferred spoon.
Maybe put on some bossa nova to set the mood. Time to heat things up.
Okay, number one, I'm so uncomfortable right now. And number two, that is not bossa nova. Bossa nova has a very specific beat to it. Like it goes 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a, so you got like da 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 da. Yes, it's in 4/4, but it is not useful to count it in 4/4 really. Why aren't you using an electric kettle? Why would you do that? Even in America with 120 volts, it's faster to use an electric kettle. I use an electric kettle. That's how I make tea.
Pot the top.
Add a tablespoon of dry mud.
Get it all wet.
Not bloody likely, honey.
Whip out your conveniently rechargeable frother.
Is that what the kids are calling it these days? Yeah, so here's a good pro tip here. I looked at pictures of that frother. That frother has a micro USB port for recharging it. That's a great way to, if you're trying to buy some type of gizmo, gadget, a little device like this, whether it's a frother or I don't know, what have you, anything that can be charged with USB. A good way to narrow down your choices is if it has a micro USB port, don't buy it. Why? Because micro USB is slightly cheaper to implement than USB-C is. Therefore, the presence of a micro USB port as opposed to a USB-C port is a good indication that first and foremost in the manufacturer's list of priorities was making every single piece of this device as cheap as possible without regard to convenience, quality, or like build, just cheap. And I guess that's their priority with the frother they give you.
Just go for it. Oh no. Oh, wow.
A few things about the frother.
Okay.
Don't fill your mug all the way up.
Check.
Submerge your frother before turning it on.
Check.
Is the frother still a metaphor?
Tilt at an angle.
I hope not.
Pulse the button.
Success.
You can add creamer, a sweetener,
You
or
already said that.
any milk that you'd like.
Try the recipes in the booklet or on our website. Play around. Make it yours.
And remember, when you're done with your cup,
Okay, this is bossa nova.
there's likely to be some leftover sediment at the bottom.
Ew, why? You can make it so that it like stays suspended in the liquid. This sounds just. Why are there so many caveats with this fucking shit? Like, why? I gotta remember all the directions for how to use the frother properly. I gotta add sweetener and cream to it. After I've heated up the water for it, and even though the water is hot, it doesn't stay dissolved. You know what stays dissolved in the water? Coffee does. Tea does. Why is there sediment left over? Why? This seems very inconvenient and like difficult to use. I don't know about this. Doesn't seem great.
This is mostly cacao, which isn't naturally soluble.
So
I mean, okay.
add more water and you've got yourself a bonus round.
But it's not soluble. So it's just gonna be water, or I'm gonna have to keep like continuously stirring it to like suspend the cacao back in the old water. Why did you make it this way?
Enjoy your new daily ritual.
Not bloody likely, sweetheart.
Reach out with any questions, and always, always remember how much we love you.
I'm trying to forget, baby. I'm trying to forget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hot.
Like, why? Why would you make it that way and then watch it back, edit it, and then watch it again and be like, this is going on our channel? I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But so that's how they present Mudwater to us. Let's see some more of their aspirational content, okay? Take a look at this use case here. If I'm hiking and I see you sitting there with a milk frother, I am going to make fun of you. No, like I am going to bully you. So just so you know. So, okay. So the selling point is fuck your coffee, right? Hopefully they don't mean like actually fucking it, because that could probably like result in some burns. But here's what I find very strange about this company. If you look at some of their Instagram posts, this slide here, they're always talking about how, like, you know, caffeine's bad, coffee is bad, right? This is actually this was published in some type of NASA publication, but when I went and looked through it, it's sort of just a short like blurb, and it says it was done at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama, where they gave different drugs to spiders, right? I don't know. This was published back in 1995. I'm just not convinced that this is any type of useful information about the relative harmfulness of any of these drugs. The same reason for what I say about mouse studies is we're pretty different from mice, but we're even more different from spiders. Like, many basic neurotransmitters do not even work in the same ways in mammals versus arthropods or insects, or when you're getting into that far of a difference evolutionarily. They're proposing that this would be a good way to test for toxicity, and I don't see that at all. It's interesting how it changes the way that they spin their web. What I do know is that even if this does represent toxicity, it only represents toxicity to spiders. I mean, it's visually interesting, but it's really only relevant to spiders. And the other thing that I would find questionable about this whole thing is that we've got normal, you know, with no chemical. Then we've got marijuana, which, okay, sure. Then we've got benzodrine. Do we know what benzodrine is? It's an old name for amphetamine. Like now they always call it amphetamine, but it's an old name for that. Which I guess they're suggesting is less toxic than caffeine. Really? That would be what they're suggesting, right? They're suggesting that amphetamine is less toxic than caffeine because that web looks, quote unquote, less deformed than the caffeine one does. And I would say that any method that spits out that result is insufficient and inapplicable to toxicity in humans. Furthermore, that's a very simplistic way of looking at the dangers associated with a psychoactive drug. I guess it would be kind of more of the way that they would have looked at it in 1995, because until like relatively maybe the most recent couple of decades, it was commonly suggested that you didn't have to worry about psychological dependence. You just had to worry about physical dependence. As long as it's not physically addictive, you don't have to worry about it, right? Like that's what you would hear, that type of rhetoric a lot of the time, as if psychological dependence was not equally, if not more difficult to break than physical dependence. Now the more up-to-date mode of thinking is that psychological dependence is just as, if not more, difficult to face down than physical dependence is. Physical dependence, you can do all kinds of things to relieve the symptoms, whereas psychological dependence, that is much harder to defeat. And so this is a very simplistic way of looking at the harms associated with drugs. This is just looking at physical toxicity. Okay, I mean, none of these substances, they probably won't kill you the first time that you use them, especially marijuana or caffeine or amphetamine. However, that's just not a very good way of looking at it, and that's certainly not. Here's Mudwater's interpretation of these results. Ready? In 1995, on what we assume was a slow day, not necessary, NASA researchers gave a test group of spiders either LSD, weed, or caffeine. Well, they also gave them speed, dude. Then they stood back and watched the intoxicated spiders weave webs. The researchers found that the more deformed the web, the more toxic the chemical was for the spider. They didn't find that, though. That wasn't an observation that they made. That's what they're assuming. They're assuming that if the web is worse, then it's more toxic for the spider. And then they make the leap here. Caffeine, as it turned out, made the jittery spider spin the most disorganized web of all. Caffeine is the world's most used psychoactive substance, and 1 cup of coffee contains 95 milligrams. Every day, millions of people guzzle an addictive drug that stimulates the release of cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. If you have a cup of coffee at 2 p.m., 1/4 of that is still circulating in your brain at midnight. Mud also contains caffeine, but at just 1/7 the amount of coffee. It's a microdose. It helps you safely ease off a caffeine habit. See, here's how you know that they don't actually believe the results of this little web experiment, right? Because if they actually believed that caffeine was more toxic than amphetamine, they would not be putting any caffeine in mud water. Not even 1/7. And by the way, it's not 1/7 anymore. It's 1/3. They're up to like 35 milligrams in there. So if I thought that something in my product, if I thought that something was more toxic than amphetamine or LSD or chloral hydrate or whatever, I would not be putting that in my product and selling it to people. But they are. They're saying, oh, well, it's just a little bit of it. I know it's illegal to put amphetamine into here, but I would suggest that if it sounds ridiculous to you for me to be like, well, it's only like 5 milligrams, that's like You know, most people take 20 milligrams of Adderall. This only has 5 milligrams of Adderall in it. So like you're going to be fine. Yeah, I wouldn't even worry about becoming dependent on it. Does that sound more or less insane to you than putting 35 milligrams of caffeine? Right. That sounds more insane. So I'm going to go with, they know that this is bullshit. They know that these webs don't mean anything. They know that caffeine is not more toxic than amphetamine. But for some reason, they're just saying this, even though it completely undermines their product. Because if you actually believe that, you wouldn't put it in your product in any amount. Would you? No, you wouldn't. Ridiculous. It's completely internally inconsistent. Because you know what else releases cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine? Speed. But their web looked okay, right? You know what else releases noradrenaline and norepinephrine? LSD. You know what they recommend all the time on their Instagram? LSD. Because you know what? It's not always a bad thing. A lot of shit releases norepinephrine and epinephrine. That's just the sympathetic nervous system. But you know why I know that they don't actually feel this way, and this is just a bunch of marketing bullshit that they don't even check for their own internal inconsistency? Because here they're recommending MDMA. You know, originally designed for blah, 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 blah. Proving that love truly can conquer all. So here's to the real MVP of relationship revivals, because sometimes all you need is love and a little chemical assistant. They're actually recommending MDMA, which I'll come out and say, like, I don't think that MDMA should be a Schedule I controlled substance. I don't think it should be illegal. I think it should probably be available for therapy, because it does, like, it even since like the 1970s, it's been known that this definitely has utility for therapeutic applications, especially with PTSD. I know that for a lot of R and SA survivors, it has been very helpful in like reprocessing things in a therapeutic environment where they're like able to access that memory and then therefore process it without it being just completely debilitating to access that memory, which is weird. It's weird that they're focusing on the couples therapy thing, because that's not really what the big promise seemed to be of MDMA back when it was first developed. It was more about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder was what it seemed to be very, very promising for, until the DEA went over the recommendations and made it Schedule I and completely illegal anyway. But the point is that if they think that everything that just releases norepinephrine and dopamine and epinephrine is so bad, do we know what MDMA stands for? MDMA stands for methylene, which is this part, methylene dioxy right here, methylene dioxy methamphetamine. This is the methamphetamine backbone right here. So it basically consists of a methamphetamine molecule, and it has these two oxygens here with this methylene group over here attached onto the ring, which it's going to alter what it does in the brain and in the body. So it is not methamphetamine, but it is related to it. And it's, if you chop off this methyl right here and you chop off this part of the ring here, then you end up with Adderall. Amphetamine, methamphetamine, methylene dioxymethamphetamine, MDMA. The point is that this drug releases like a shitload of serotonin along with norepinephrine and epinephrine. So it would seem that you can't just classify things as broadly bad or broadly good based on this shit. Also, I would love to see the spider web that this would cause. It's kind of interesting though, because you can see why this is a lot more serotonergic. If you ever see the structure of serotonin, it looks a lot more like this, whereas dopamine and norepinephrine look a lot like this part. This is an organic chemistry structure, because when you're dealing with carbon, like it doesn't really, it's just knowing what like C9H13NO or whatever, that's not really telling you anything when it's a carbon compound, because it could arrange itself in a bunch of different ways. You have to know like how it's actually arranged, how the carbons are linked to each other. Like this is a carbon, this is a carbon, this is a carbon. And then you assume that wherever there's a carbon that's not shown to be attached to 4 other things, then you assume that it has however many hydrogens are necessary to make it attached to 4 things. And so you just don't draw the hydrogens in when they're attached to carbons. And that's what these are. I feel like these are used a lot as sort of like stock images when someone's talking about a drug or whatever. You see like these structures a lot, and I don't know, maybe you wondered what they are, maybe you don't. So number one, I think it's weird for Mud Water to be talking about this, and number two, I think it's kind of hypocritical and inconsistent with the way that they talk about everything else. It's weird to talk about this as being super beneficial, but then to act like caffeine is like the spawn of Satan, and yet you have caffeine in your product. I don't know. And I think that it's a little bit naive and a little bit short-sighted to not acknowledge that MDMA can also be pretty harmful when it's, being in an uncontrolled situation. Like, yeah, it can be harmless, but it can also be pretty harmful. It's not something that should be just dealt with very lightly. It's a very powerful drug that should be that you should be very careful about and very informed about before using, and in my opinion, ideally, and it should be in a therapeutic setting. But I realize that is not super accessible, and I realize that some people like to use it recreationally. I'm not going to talk about that here. I lived in LA. I mean, but I don't like the way that they're just willy-nilly just recommending it for everyone when there are a lot of risks associated with MDMA. It can, the crash that it tends to cause, especially in a lot of, especially in women, it tends to cause a pretty big crash the next day, and that can cause some pretty serious depression, and depression can be pretty dangerous. It can be pretty debilitating. And I just don't think that any of this is being addressed here, because we're just acting like this is a complete good thing, which I don't think that any substance is ever a completely, good thing. It's you have to be aware that it's going to affect people differently, that anything that is potentially pleasurable like this can potentially lead to an addiction, and that anything that has this type of backbone, this amphetamine backbone, could be unsuitable for someone who has heart problems, for one thing, because that's not something that you need to be exciting. You don't need to be putting a bunch of sympathetic activity into someone who has a heart issue. It could also be very dangerous for anyone who has had like a psychotic episode in the past, or who has any type of schizophrenia. This could definitely, MDMA or any other type of dopaminergic drug could be very triggering for that. It could cause another episode. And I don't think that any of that's being addressed here, because I just don't think that this Mudwater company is qualified to be talking about particularly a synthetic drug like this, because MDMA is a synthetic drug. This does not occur in nature. There's nothing like it occurs in nature. The closest thing that occurs in nature to it would be like saffron oil, which is not the same thing. It doesn't have any of these effects. All of the amphetamine class drugs, they are completely synthetic. They did not exist until the 1920s through the 1940s. So I just think that there's potentially something riskier there, because, it's just been in human history for a shorter amount of time. So there's less that we can know about it than something like mushrooms or whatever, or marijuana, where people have been using that for thousands and thousands of years. Not that one is bad and one is good. I'm just saying that the amount of knowledge we can have accumulated about it is going to be a little spottier, and it's going to be a little bit more complicated when it's something that has been with the human race for less than 100 years. So that's what I feel about how they feel about MDMA. So let's look at, so the whole thesis of this is that it's going to be so much better than coffee. And coffee, I mean, if you drink coffee, you're obviously going to perish. You will die. It will literally kill you. How dare you? You won't, all of the webs that you spin will be so fucked up. Peter Parker was like an early convert to mud water, I'm assuming, except not really, because mud water still contains caffeine. And I don't know if they ever ran any tests where they gave the, spiders 1/3 the amount of caffeine. Oh, wait, that's because they never told us what the dose was for a spider. Oh, and that's because that wouldn't be relevant, because I don't even know how much caffeine a spider would normally drink when a spider drinks coffee. Do you see how this doesn't work? I really hate this product. Let's look at pricing. Okay, so mud water costs $40 for 30 servings, which is $1.33 per cup. So I took the liberty of doing some calculations on what coffee costs. I realized that coffee is literally poison, but in case $1.33 a cup is a little bit steep for you, I know it is for me. Let's see what coffee would run you. So I got here that you can get Tim Hortons K-Cups for 35 cents a piece. You could get brand name Keurig K-Cups for 40 cents a piece. Starbucks K-Cups, 60 cents a piece. And that's if you're just insisting on using K-Cups, which you really shouldn't. And why you shouldn't, but I'm not going to belabor the point. But even then, it looks like that would be at least 2 to 3 times cheaper than mud water, and probably tastier, because I think that the coffee usually, if I'm not mistaken, becomes all liquid and doesn't have sediment, and you don't have to froth it either. You can if you want to make like a cappuccino or something, but I don't believe that is mandatory with coffee. Yeah. But if you got like Starbucks whole beans, that would be 8 cents a cup. And that's for Starbucks. You could also get Mayorga organic for 9 cents a cup if you got the whole beans. Cafe Vita, Cafe del Sol would be 13 cents a cup. But you could even get the San Francisco Bay certified 100% Kona coffee whole beans. And even that would only be 53 cents a cup. So, and I'm sure that 100% Kona is absolutely delicious. So probably a lot tastier. I realize that it has caffeine in it, but there's actually this, you might not have heard of it. There's this obscure type of coffee called, starts with D. It's like decaf or something. Oh, decaf. I've heard that there's a variety called decaf that doesn't have caffeine in it, and like theoretically, if you still wanted some caffeine, you could probably, you could probably mix them. You could just mix your own coffee grounds and do it that way, or you could have 1 cup of the caffeinated and 1 cup of decaf if you wanted to really get intense with it, and that would you could actually have even the 100% Kona. You could have 1 cup decaf and 1 cup of the regular, and that would still be cheaper than mud water. It only cost you $1.06 for 2 cups, 1 apiece. And then, yeah, that's assuming you live long enough after drinking that much poison water, which I realize you probably won't live very long. If you drink any caffeine, you will literally die, unless it's caffeine that's in mud water, because that like doesn't count. I just find this to be a very strange proposition, and it's very weird to me that it's this popular with people. But I just wanted to attack it from one more angle, and that is from the fact that they have this Q&A section on their website. And let me share some of these questions with you and their answers. So here's these questions, and of particular interest, I find to be this one. If you're thinking this shit is expensive, you're not wrong. Number one, that's not a question. Number two, yeah, we could have made our products cheaper, but cutting corners on what goes in your body is just borrowing money from future doctor visits, medical bills, and poor performance. So if you get the cheap mushrooms, you're like, okay. Mud water costs more because our mushrooms are grown in the US and our ingredients are USDA certified organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, kosher, and vegan. Our original blend is also Whole30 approved, which is good because you never know when Rachel Hollis might come by. Our products cost more because we find a way to blend in over 2,000 milligrams 2,000 milligrams of adaptogenic mushrooms per serving, providing energy, focus, and immune support with a flavor you can build a ritual around. They cost more because you're drinking a drink that we made for ourselves. When it comes to what we put in our body, we're all worth it. Okay, L'Oreal. We could have taken some shortcuts. We could have snuck in some fillers and sweeteners, but if we did that, we'd have to drink it too. Okay. Let me just show you what 2,000 milligrams of something looks like. That right there, that is 2,000 milligrams of cinnamon. Here, I'll bring it closer. 2,000 milligrams. Okay, that's 2,000 milligrams of cinnamon right there. And no, I will not be doing the cinnamon challenge, okay? I used to watch Gluud LL. And we're not even talking about a spice like cinnamon. We're talking about mushrooms, okay? Mushrooms. So I don't want to hear about how expensive 2,000 milligrams of mushrooms is. It's 2 grams. And we're talking about mushrooms here. So I took the liberty of looking up some pricing on some mushrooms, okay? And let's remember they're not even using mushrooms. They're using mushroom powder. So, according to my calculations, per each can, of 30 servings, that should add up to 22.5 grams of tea, 67.2 grams of mushrooms, 57 grams of cacao, 12.6 grams of turmeric, 15 grams of cinnamon, 5.1 grams of ginger, cordyceps, black pepper, nutmeg, and cloves, and 600 milligrams of salt. So I looked at multiple suppliers of mushroom powders that were USDA certified organic, kosher, all that shit, grown in the United States. And each mushroom I found priced at 1.3 to 2.5 cents per gram, which would be about 87 cents to $1.67 per can of mud water for all the mushrooms total. Like, they ranged from 1.3 to 2.5 cents per gram. And when you add up all of the quantities, because I'm not going to do it for each mushroom, it's about 87 cents to $1.67 per can of mud water. And that's just for me pricing out these ingredients from like ingredient suppliers. Whereas if I were a large company, I would obviously get a much better deal than someone who's just buying a bunch of, mushroom powder. And that was all USDA certified organic, all of that shit. Turmeric I found is 0.4 cents per gram. All of this is organic. So that's about 5 cents worth of turmeric per can. Cacao is 0.9 cents per gram, certified organic. And that's about 53 cents per can of mud water. And the salt is essentially free, even though it's Himalayan. The cinnamon would add up to about 8 cents total for the whole can. And all of the spices I found would add up to about 11 cents per can of mud water. So the cost of the ingredients in each 30 serving can of mud water is actually a maximum of $1.64 to $2.44. And that's if you got the absolute worst pricing. Like if you got the prices that I got just searching from various ingredient suppliers. So I'm not seeing how they're getting a retail price of $40 out of that and saying that it's due to the costs of their ingredients. I'm going to go with it's probably number one, the cost of marketing more so than the cost of the ingredients. So I don't like how they're trying to say that it's because their ingredients are so high quality, because I mean, even if they were low quality ingredients, that's only going to make a difference of like $1 in the cost of your product, because your ingredients, even though they're high quality, still only cost $2.44 tops. So that's bullshit. That they're just lying there, because how could something that only costs $2.44 for the whole can that you sell for $40, how could that be responsible for any significant portion of the price that you're charging? I'm not saying that's the price that they should charge. I'm saying that that's not the reason that the price is so high. The reason the price is so high is because you're doing a huge amount of really expensive social media marketing, and probably the fact that you can, a product doesn't have to be priced at what its ingredients cost. That's not how pricing works. Pricing is, everything is worth what the purchaser will pay for it. But that doesn't give you a right to just be like, oh, well, it's because our ingredients are so high quality. No, it's not. No, it's not. That makes like literally maybe $1 of difference. That's it. So really what you're paying for when you pay $40 for 30 servings of mud water is you're paying for their insane marketing budget, I'm sure. Because I've heard of, a 2 times markup or a 4 times markup, but a 17 times markup is pretty intense there in mud water, especially when you're not even selling it through retailers at that price. So I would say mud water is a load of bullshit. 2,000 milligrams of mushrooms, even if they did work and were adaptogenic, isn't going to do anything, because even like the most rudimentary mushroom like recipes when you're eating them as food call for hundreds of grams of mushrooms, not 2 grams. So how's that going to do anything? It still has caffeine in it, so I don't see why this would be some sort of dramatic replacement for your coffee. And it's way more expensive. It costs many times, sometimes hundreds of times more. So it costs way more than coffee. It's not really that different from it in terms of the caffeine content. The mushrooms aren't going to do anything for you because, number one, there's no evidence that they would do anything for you, and number two, there's not enough of them in the drink for them to be effective, if they were effective in the first place. And the mud water costs so much. And the reason that mud water costs so much has nothing to do with the cost of the ingredients, because I priced out the ingredients. All of it was organic, all of it was USDA certified, all of it grown in the United States. It doesn't add up to $40. It costs $2.44 tops. I've been Mac. Peace out. Bye!
If you were sorry, you would give back what you stole. If you were sorry, you would give back what you stole. Liar, liar, bullshit supplier, plundered words, counterfeit dreams you sell. Liar, liar, gaslights just start fires. Guess you'll feel at home when you burn in hell. Whoa, liar, liar, oh liar, liar, oh liar, liar. Rachel Hollis, Grant Cardone, Joyce Meyer, Jerry Clark, Dan Pena, Tony Robbins, liars. Whoa, liar, liar, oh liar, liar, oh liar, liar. Flim flam faker, self-help dumpster